It is Wednesday, July 9th. We're going to talk about measuring success when we're tapping to make sure we stay motivated to keep after it. Welcome to Wednesdays with Gene. I am the eponymous Gene Montrestelli. We get together here on YouTube every single Wednesday. Thank you for joining us live. Thank you for joining us after the fact. Today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how do we get the most out of tapping by measuring the success, because it's super easy to be distracted, to be demotivated, and as we engage with all of that, as always, what we're going to do is just take a break, take a nice big deep breath, put ourselves into our bodies, and we're just going to do a minute and a half of just wordless tapping, content-free intervention. Just take a nice easy deep breath and just move from tapping point to tapping point. Let your fingers do the walking. And if anything comes bubbling up as we're working our way through it, make sure you jot it down. And if you notice something in your body, some resistance, some tension, don't do anything other than just notice it. Oh, look at that. There's a little tension there. Oh, I feel that in my solar plexus. And just pay attention. Oh, nice big deep breath. Stretch. Shake it off a little bit. Thanks for checking in the chat box. We got folks in Nevada, Pennsylvania, Honduras, Denver, Wyoming. Barbara, whenever you say middle of nowhere of Nevada, I always think of Winnemucca. I have no idea if that's where you are, but that just kind of feels like the edge of the world driving through Nevada to Maine. Awesomeness. Let's take a quick look at the calendar before we jump in and talk about the stuff we're going to talk about today. Next week, we're going to do some tapping for peace. And then next Friday, we got the 24 hours of tapping. It's going to be absolutely amazing. We've actually done some of the pre-records for that. If you go to 24hoursoftapping.com, you can get on the mailing list. You'll get access to all the replays, the recordings, all of that sort of good stuff. It's going to be an amazing 24 hours. You don't have to show up for the entire thing. You'll get recordings after the fact. And it's an opportunity to support a really amazing cause. And if you aren't familiar with the Peaceful Heart Network, if you join us for the 24 hours of tapping, you're going to hear we've been collecting some absolutely amazing stories of the work that they are doing all over the world. So, measuring success as we are tuning in to tapping. And one of the things that I've given a lot of thought to recently is every single time we sit down to do transformation, our goal is total, eternal, instant transformation. That's what we want. We want instantaneous, total, eternal transformation. I can remember years and years ago, I was working with someone who was working with me hesitantly. That they were tapping with me because someone in their life had strongly encouraged them to tap with me. And it's possible that one of the reasons that they were tapping with me was just to appease the person that kept saying, go tap with Gene, go tap with Gene, go tap with Gene, go tap with Gene. Because if she went and did it, then she wouldn't have to hear that anymore. So we started in a place of resistance, to say the least. 15 minutes into our work, they were disappointed because a single round of tapping did not transform a childhood issue. In 15 minutes, went from being super skeptical to being disappointed because it was not instantaneous. And everything that we do in life we evaluate to see if it's worth our time, to see if it's worth our effort. And when we are evaluating something, we are evaluating it based on a standard, that we walk into it with a particular standard. I have a standard for a sandwich that I buy from a food cart in the park, which might be a different standard from a 3-starred restaurant where I'm getting a hamburger there as well. My expectations based on context impact the way I evaluate something. And the reality is, our emotional response, happiness, whether or not something is good or not, is outcome divided by expectation. What that means is, what is my outcome divided by what is the expectation I have going in there? So if I told you that I got 7 things done today, was that a good day or was that a bad day? Well, it depends. If I wanted to get 5 things done today, getting 7 things done today is 140% of my to-do list. I'm doing backflips on my way out of the office. But if my expectation was to do 10 things today and I only did 7 things, well, then I only did 70% of what I was hoping for, and I'm disappointed because I came up short. But in both cases, the number of things that I got done was exactly the same. And so part of my relationship to anything I do, part of my relationship to any transformational tool I engage with is going to be directly connected to what is my expectation when I sit down to do it. One of the things that I was having a conversation with my students in the Tapping Mastery Academy last week around was expectations. And what is the timeline of expectation when we sit down to tap? Do I expect the expectation in a round of tapping, which is an artificial amount of time? A round of tapping is until I stop. Typically, when I'm tapping on my own, I'm tapping with a client, we might do 5 or 6 rounds before I check back in, but sometimes we do 10. So it's an artificial length of time. And so I'm making a measurement, how far do we get in that artificial length of time? A tapping session is an artificial length of time, be it one where you're working with a practitioner where you've signed up for 30 minutes, or when I sit down and I do 20 minutes of tapping on my own, I decide I have this much time to commit to it. So I've created this constraint. What is my expectation inside of that artificial amount of time that I'm engaging with? Is it over the course of a number of sessions? And so happiness is outcome divided by expectation. And when I'm using a tool, tapping or otherwise, if I am moving from a point of view of I am only emotionally satisfied, and again, there's a difference between what I intellectually think and what I emotionally think, but if I am only emotionally satisfied with instantaneous tonal eternal transformation, most of the rounds of tapping I do are going to be very, very disappointing. And if the rounds of tapping I do are very, very disappointing, I'm not going to come back to it again. Not because it wasn't useful, but it wasn't useful enough based on what I had evaluated as useful. So the way that we are able to come back to tapping again and again is to manage our expectations and clearly evaluate the work that we're doing. Managing my expectations is not lowering my expectations. Managing my expectations is being in relationship with what is reasonable in front of me. And then once I have a manageable expectation or a reasonable expectation, I can have the expectation that I'm going to do a round of tapping and I'm going to sprout wings and I'm going to fly away. If that's my expectation, that is not a manageable or a reasonable expectation. Now, maybe that's a limiting belief of mine, but that's the place I'm coming from. So we want to make sure that we have something that's reasonable but we also need to measure it accurately, because it is possible for me to have transformation and not realize it. And part of the reason that this is the case is because much of the work that we do with tapping is subtractive. It's not additive. And what I mean by that is we are tapping to remove something. I'm tapping to remove pain. I'm tapping to remove an emotion or diminish an emotion. I'm tapping to diminish or remove resistance. And those are really hard things to remember because normal becomes new normal so quickly. You know, I'm in a circumstance where I'm tapping for a pain in my knee that is at a 7. And I do a bunch of tapping. And at the end of that tapping on a SUD scale, instead of being at a 7, it's now at a 4. And I am amazed. And tomorrow I wake up and it's still at a 4 and I'm amazed. And the next day I wake up, it's still at a 4 and I'm amazed. And the next day I wake up and I go, my knee hurts. Even though it's still at that 4, even though there has been that diminishing, I have forgotten where I was, and I'm only focusing on what is in front of me now, and what's in front of me now is still pain. And so it can make me feel like, oh, that tapping thing didn't work. It's like wearing a pair of shoes that are too tight. You take them off, you can feel them for about 15 minutes, and then 30 minutes later, you don't remember it. And 3 days later, you don't remember it. And you put the same shoes back on. You put the cruel shoes back on. And you're in pain again because you've forgotten what it was like. And so what that means is, for me, I need to be clear and hyper vigilant about paying attention to my progress. It's not so that I can like give myself gold stars and be happy that I'm making progress, but because it helps me to stay engaged, which means I use the tool more and more and more and more as we navigate our way through all of that. So I have two concepts. I have a concept and I have a rubric that I want to share with you that I think will make a big difference as we engage with this, or at least these are the things that are useful for me. The first is the concept of the 10% solution. And this is an idea that I learned from my friend Dan Cleary. Dan is a hypnotist. Dan is brilliant. And when I first trained with Dan, I don't know what the stats are now, but when I first trained with Dan, and he specialized in pain management because of his own lived experience, he said that it typically took people between 5 and 7 years in conventional medicine before they would come to a hypnotist for pain management. So he had people sitting down in front of them who had tried all sorts of things, who had been through lots of things, and were not having the success that they wanted. And so he'd have them describe the pain that they were in, and he'd go, great. How would you feel if after a round of hypnosis, all of that pain was gone? And they're like, that's great. And he goes, forget it. It's not going to happen. He goes, but tell me how your life would be different if 50% of the pain went away. And they would describe their life. Tell me how your life would be different if 25% of the pain went away. And they describe their life. Tell me how your life would be different if 10% of the pain went away. And so maybe if I have a back issue, if I reduce the pain, all of a sudden I can now sit down for 90 minutes or 2 hours without being in super discomfort, which now means I can go to a movie, which now means I can go out to dinner with my family. And so even though there's still pain, 90% of it's still hanging around, the quality of my life has transformed. And so for me, when I'm tapping, let's say I'm using a SUD scale, 0 to 10, how painful is something, how much resistance is there, how much fear is there, my goal is not to get that to a 0. My goal is to create the transformation so I can live the way that I want to live. And sometimes, like an emotional resistance, if it's at a 7 and I do tapping and I get it down to a 5, I've now diminished the resistance enough that I can take action. Where other times I start at a 5, and even though I've gotten the resistance down to a 2, I still can't take action because there's still too much resistance. It's contextual. And so it's not about the diminishing of. It's valuable to diminish pain and to reduce negative emotions and that sort of stuff, but it's not about diminishing them. It's about when they're diminished, what is the consequence of that particular thing? And so when I sit down to tap, it's useful for me to have a goal of what is the outcome that I want from this tapping in my life? Not a, what is the outcome from this tapping so I can make notes as part of my certification because we started at a SUDS level of 9 and we're now at a SUDS level of a 3. Like that's good tracking to do as a practitioner. But as a tapper, where I'm just tapping in my life, where I'm helping people, it doesn't matter how we feel at the end of the session. It matters what the consequence is as we go into our life. When I'm really, really stressed, feeling a little stressed right now, a little anxiety, because I got a lot going on between now and next Friday when we do the 24 hours of tapping, because there are a few moving parts to bring together 26 speakers from multiple continents and multiple time zones and make all of that show up in a way where thousands of people can join us in a dynamic way. That is something that creates some stress and some tension. So in the middle of the day when I'm distracted, the round of tapping I'm doing, the goal is to reduce the anxiety enough so I can engage with the next task that is in front of me. And so when I sit down to tap, it's good for me not to go, what is the diminishment that I'm looking for? Or what is the growth I'm looking for? I'm adding a resource, I'm adding a belief or whatever it is. How does that show up in my life? So recognize that incremental change makes a difference. How does it show up in my life? So there are 3 lenses, and I learned this from my friend Mary Ayers. I don't know where she learned it from, but she was the one who introduced it to me. That there are 3 ways that we can measure change in our life. And that is frequency, duration, and intensity. There are 3 different ways that we can look at progress. So frequency. Frequency is how often does the thing happen? I'm in a circumstance where I keep being distracted and I'm picking up my phone and I'm scrolling Instagram in the middle of the day instead of doing what's in front of me. So if I'm regularly doing that every 45 minutes, and after I do a round of tapping and I work on it and whatever, all of a sudden I'm now doing it every 60 minutes or every hour and 15 minutes. I'm still doing the exact same thing, but instead of doing it every 45 minutes, I'm doing it every 75 minutes, which means I'm distracted during my day. Instead of being distracted during my day 11 times, I'm being distracted during my day 7 times. Yes, I'm still being distracted, but it's better. Whenever I do anything, I live in the ERs. And I don't mean I live in the emergency room, but I live in better, easier, gentler, faster, softer, kinder. And so by knowing the frequency in which I'm doing something, I had a client one of mine, we were not working on this issue, but it was a comment that she just made as we were checking in with each other at the beginning of the session. And she said, Gene, it's so amazing. I'm only having seizures 6 days a week. That was the vocabulary she used. Only 6 days a week. I could not imagine having seizures 6 days a week. But she used to have them every single day. And so all of a sudden, she was in a circumstance where she had one full day where she didn't have any issues at all, which means she got to do everything that she wanted to do in a way that was not disruptive. So that is frequency. Number 2, duration. How long do we stay in the stuck place? Okay, so let's go back to my example of scrolling Instagram. Well, let's pretend that I keep being distracted and I keep doing it, but instead, every 45 minutes of spending 5 minutes on Instagram, I'm only spending 2 minutes on Instagram. So I'm still doing it every 45 minutes, but over the course of the day, instead of going from 5 minutes to 2 minutes, I'm going from 55 minutes to 22 minutes. I'm still doing it for 22 minutes a day, but I found a half hour in there where I'm not doing that thing. Because the duration of what was going on. At 3 different points in my practice, I have had clients I've worked with threaten legal action because they were dissatisfied with what was going on. One of them actually blamed me for her frozen pipes, that I had frozen her pipes in another country. Like, if I was that powerful, we wouldn't be tapping here on YouTube. But these came in. The first time I received that sort of engagement, it emotionally threw me off for 36 hours. The second time it happened for the rest of the day. So 7, 8, 9 hours. The third time it happened, it lasted for 45 minutes. The intensity of the emotion was exactly the same. The frequency was exactly the same. The duration went from 36 hours to 8 or 9 hours to 45 minutes. So even though I felt the same way because of the same thing, it impacted me for less time. So we have frequency, we have duration, and then we have intensity. Something going down in intensity where something goes wrong. I've been dealing with a technology problem. And 3.5 weeks ago, when that technological problem happened, I was angry. I was swearing out loud angry. Now, when I encounter the exact same problem, it's really frustrating. And it is hard for me to focus, and I need to get back on track. But there is a huge difference of me being so angry that I am swearing at my computer to me being frustrated where it's slowing me down. And as we're tapping, we aren't necessarily only going to have success by one of those metrics. It's not that I'm only going to have frequency diminish, or I'm only going to have intensity diminish, or I'm only going to have duration diminish. With a lot of these issues, and the examples I gave were just one of those just for explanation purposes, but a lot of time what's going to happen is, my anger to my frustration around this technological thing, not only has the intensity diminished, the times I get frustrated are fewer than the times that I got angry, so the frequency diminished, and because it was anger, it was frustration instead of anger, getting out of it was much easier, so the duration diminished. So as I tapped on the issue, as I created some transformation and added some new information in my life, I impacted all three of those. Happening less often, happening for less time, happening less intensely. And you'll notice, at no point in any of that description did I say, it stopped happening. There was no duration. There was no intensity. Now that does happen. I don't want to say that we don't get to a place where we are completely liberated from something. That absolutely 100% happens all the time. But let's go back to our beginning presence, our beginning supposition. Happiness or satisfaction is outcome divided by expectation. And so if my expectation is not total, eternal, instantaneous transformation, but my expectation is better, gentler, calmer, slower, quicker, whatever that is, if I do that, then all of a sudden I have a tool and I have a way of measuring this that makes it so much easier for us. So it's super important to recognize our willingness to engage with something again and again and again is directly connected to our expectation and how our expectations are met. If we have unclear or unreasonable expectations of a round of tapping or tapping as a tool in general, then we're consistently going to be dissatisfied, which means we're going to do it less and less and less. This is not an invitation for you to lower your standards. This is an invitation to be clearer in the way that you engage with the tool set, which is going to make it so much easier for you in the moment to have progress, in the moment be satisfied with the work that you're doing, and in the future be so much more likely to reach for the tool set because of the outcomes that you're getting from that particular thing. So those are my thoughts on how do we measure success and why it is valuable. I think just introducing this into your life as you are thinking about. So if you tap on an issue today and 3 or 4 days from now, like for me, like I do deep dive tapping, I typically do it on a Tuesday after work and I do it Saturday morning. Like if I tap on something on Tuesday and then on Saturday when I'm evaluating what is going on, the question isn't, did I stop that thing? The question is the thing that I tapped on. How can I measure frequency, duration, and intensity so I can see the progress that I'm making, so I can create some momentum as we move forward? So introduce the simple idea into the work that you're doing. It's going to make a huge difference for you as you move forward. If you're in a circumstance where you just want to capture some of these ideas of what you're tapping on and what's coming up, I actually got a free resource. It's called the Tapping Tracker because it taps your tracking. If you go to tappingtracker.com, you can get it absolutely free. There's a PDF version so you can print it out. There's a Word document version so you can type right into it. There's a 30-day version. There is a 90-day version. And if you download the Word doc, you can customize it to make it as short as long as you you want. But what it's going to do is it's going to make it so much easier when you sit down to have a framework to be able to engage with that sort of stuff. A couple quick footnotes for you. Tapping Podcast. We actually have an episode going out tomorrow about expectation versus excuses versus explanation, and how we can beat ourselves up. It goes hand in hand with evaluating how we are moving forward. If you'd like to join us in the Tapping Mastery Academy this week, we're actually doing an entire class on uncovering hidden beliefs that are holding us back. How do you find and uproot those beliefs that you don't even know that are there? You know that there's something in the way. We did the first version of the class last night. We're doing it again Sunday at 12 noon, tappingqna.com/TMA. I'd love for you to join us. And finally, please come join us for the 24 hours of tapping. It's going to be so good. I have so many fun tapping friends that I cannot wait to share with you. Please invite a friend. Don't spam your inbox, but there might be one or two people you want to encourage. All you need to do is go to 24hoursoftapping.com. You'll get the live stream link. You'll get access to the replays. You'll get schedule. You'll get all sorts of good stuff as we engage with all of that. So once again, thanks for hanging out with me. Remember, a week from today, 11 a.m. Eastern time, we're going to be back here. We're just going to gather a bunch of people together. We're going to do 20 or 30 minutes just tapping for peace in ourselves, tapping for peace in the world. Need a little bit of that at this particular moment in history. I'd love if you would join us for that. If you are watching this after the fact on the screen right now, you can actually see the playlist for all of the lives. We are here every single Wednesday. Have an awesome week. I will see you next Wednesday when we tap for peace. I will see you next Friday for the 24 hours of tapping. Have an awesome day wherever you are in the world. Talk to you guys real soon. Bye-bye.